validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt up on the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher constantly, making my own climb. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. Whoa. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield.
All right, how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we're talking about this, that, and everything in between. I see shout out to Xander from FX Trader. Oh, man. It's been a long week. Got a lot of stuff going on. I got a lot of stuff to do. So here on This and That, where we're live 7 nights a week, we do not let the sun rise without going live, but we don't always start on time. We did get really close today, about 5 minutes late. So we ask you guys to like, subscribe, match the reaction buttons while you're here, and then go check out the membership after you're done to be able to see what's going on with the show, and hit those notification buttons so that you know when we go live, so that you don't miss out on anything that happens while we're live. We are today going to be talking about a pretty thick topic that I think we can run through pretty quickly. Really depends on how the audience does it. But I believe we got about a 2-hour show here tonight. So make sure that you guys, if you have time, that you guys hang out. We're going to get through all of this stuff. Being live 7 nights a week, we have different topics every night of the week. We have on Sundays questions and comments from the fans, which we did a lot of stuff yesterday. We were like 4.5 hours yesterday with our discussion. So I'm proud of you guys for that. Then we have on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays about business and politics, where on Monday we talk about how politics negatively impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money. And today being Monday, we're actually going to be talking about some of the new things that are in the works right now that has not been reinforced, so that you guys can understand what's going on right now, changing as opposed to what used to happen at around this time of year. Uh, Tuesdays, we talk about different ways to make, save, and invest money so that you guys can budget your money, rebalance yourselves, to rethink how you look at money. And then Wednesdays, we talk about different countries around the world that we can live and invest in, as well as potentially like find that passport bro style traditional. He said 2 hour show is rare anymore. Yeah, we got like 4 hour shows, 6 hour shows, 9 hour shows, especially when Sterling comes on talking about how much he hates Walmart. Like a 1 hour show, I feel like I didn't do you justice. He said, and I'm here for all of it. That's great. Fantastic. I appreciate my members showing up to the top of the thing. And I love that. Trader says, also, happy Monday to the evil cult members who are desperately trying to destroy my reputation with their lies online. What cult members? What people do you have supposedly trolling you on social media? I don't understand. I don't understand that scenario. After Wednesdays, we have on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we have um, discussions about self-improvement, personal development, relationship topics, socialization, negotiations, building your brand, raises, promotions, retirement, forced retirement, severance packages, termination, and then we talk to you guys about how to build your 20 and 30-year plan so that you guys can have your future more successfully prepared, as opposed to living in the moment, changing your life from being a reactionary lifestyle where you adapt to the things that happen in your life to preparing your life for the things that you want to have happen in your life. And I think that that would be more effective for you guys. So while you're here, make sure that you guys mash those reaction buttons to show support for the show, because a lot more people get to see what we got going on here. Trader says he's going to tell me one day. We'll see then. I'll keep my eyes open when you give me the scoop and the skinny, because it might be a misconception in life. Because truth be told, the one person who can destroy your reputation the fastest is yourself. That's something that you just got to recognize before we get started with today's main topic. Is the fact that like somebody can say something negative about you, and it can maybe raise an eyebrow depending on what was said, but your character, your behavior pattern actually reinforces who you really are. And a lot of the times, trying to defend yourself against a false statement actually hurts your reputation more than it helps your reputation. And the reason being is because you only have to defend yourself against the truth, right? So if it's not true, why are you trying so hard to defend yourself? If somebody makes a comment about me on the podcast that's not true, if I stop the whole podcast and try to prove them wrong, I would be counterproductive, because I would be reinforcing the observation that it quite possibly could be true. If somebody makes a comment on the podcast and I completely ignore it, delete the podcast, ban the person, and just continue to move past the comment section, everybody will disregard that comment as a troll, even if that person were telling the truth. So in order for somebody to truly be destroying or attempting to destroy your reputation, they would have to know things about you in your past. They would have to be presenting that information online where you can see it and where your network could see it. And then you would be desperately trying to play collateral damage by putting a counter post to prevent them from getting the traffic that they need on the channel. Truth is, bro, if somebody put up something about you that's not true on a social media platform, all you have to do is report it to the admin. You don't have to respond to the content. You don't have to say anything about the content. You just report it to the admin. And by reporting it to the admin for things like harassment and other such things, the admin will remove the comment. They'll remove the whole comment. They'll remove the whole thread, right? And if an event that is happening multiple times and you report it to the admin, about fake accounts that are putting up false information about you, and they'll remove the whole account. They'll start banning accounts. When people connect to your account just so that they control your account, you can effectively have them banned. And not only will they not be able to have access to you anymore, you won't have access to them anymore, and you'll no longer be tormented while you're on social media. But as adults, if we spent more time on off of social media, building our money up, we wouldn't know that somebody was on social media trying to tear us down, right? Trader says, I agree. That's why I let them keep lying and ignore them. But you can always just, if you see the comment, if the comment is coming across your For You page or it's on your wall on Facebook or something like that, you can always just report that comment to the admins and then they'll do something about it, right? That way you don't got to worry about it. He says, they follow me to different chats and keep trying. And the only reason why they're following you to different chats is because you haven't reported it. You're trying to run from them without doing anything about it. I know we were raised when we were kids. Oh, snitches get stitches. Don't snitch. Don't snitch. We're in 2026. If you take the necessary action that we used to take in 1996, you'd be in prison. So the appropriate thing to do is to go to somebody who has more authority over the scenario than you do and let them know, hey, this is not effective for me. And by letting the admins know that their product is now negatively impacting me because of someone else is using a product, in order for them to keep me using the product, they're going to take that person off. That's how that works. That's business. Because if you were doing business with a company and one of the employees was an asshole, you're not going to argue with the employee. What you would do is you would go and talk to that employee's superior and say, hey, I do business with you guys on a regular basis. I don't want to be treated like this. This person is not treating me the way I would prefer to be treated, not treating me the way everybody else here treats me. And I want it to stop. That conversation would lead to that person being at least removed while you are present, if not permanently removed from the job. Depending on how much you impact the company, it depends on how much discipline they put towards the person, right? But social media is a whole different ballgame. And the reason why social media is a whole different ballgame is because people will preferably, yo, what's going on to buzzer? Social media is a different ballgame because people have the lack of accountability, and adults in their lives have the lack of accountability because children, everybody has a lack of accountability because it doesn't have to be a real profile name. It doesn't have to be a real photo. Your personal information doesn't have to be on your chat wall or whatever. So the person cannot find you and bust you in the mouth because you said and did the things that you said and did on social media in a moment. So you can disrespect or insult somebody and have a chuckle, and somebody else would have to accept them, right? Because again, when we start talking about constitutional rights and privileges, we have the right to do whatever we want to do, stuff, but to disrespect other people as our First Amendment constitutional right is counteracted by our self-entitlement to be respected by other people, mutual respect, because we respect other people. So when we get disrespected in a group of individuals that we attempt to respect, we feel like our rights are being violated, but we don't have a right to be respected. We have a self-entitlement to be respected, right? So if we get disrespected, that's the part where you got to just suck it up and move on, right? He says, I think they DM the people running the chats. They're clever. Hey, maybe you may just have to leave that platform and go somewhere else. All right, now today we're supposed to be talking about what's going on in politics for you guys that are interested in that. So I want you guys to hang out with me. I know you probably heard that Congress is once again scrambling to stop the government from shutting down, but this time they're doing it a whole lot sooner. I know that usually what happens is when we start talking about a government shutdown is that they failed to articulate a budget all the way across the board. And as a result, employees don't get paid. Now, this year is going to be one of the first years that I have heard of where they're actually talking about the paycheck for the government agents first, where we can get the paycheck out of the way so that everything else about the budget that we don't agree on does not negatively impact people getting paid like TSA agents and everything to that effect. People getting furloughed, sent home without pay, and all this other stuff, coming to work without pay, and all this other stuff, which actually would rectify downturns in the economy, right? Because at least once a year, if not twice a year, we have situations where the government stops for like 2 or 3 months because they have not paid anybody, or they're unwilling to continue paying anybody until they finish talking about the money. So this year, they're starting now in August to talk exclusively about paying the government agents first, then talking about the rest of the budget. So if they can get this under control before September 30th, the employees will get paid even if the rest of the budget doesn't get worked on. So that'll be a fantastic thing. So then we'll be experiencing what will be called a partial shutdown, where all of the employees will be getting a paycheck, but certain government entities may not. And that would allow for you and me to continue to see the things that we need to see with our daily operations. And that's one of the reasons why I'm covering the show. But I know that you guys are likely thinking, great, another crisis in Washington. But then you glance at your own finances. Your credit card statements show up and the interest charges make your eyes water. Your savings account, the one you've been carefully adding to, feels like it's barely staying afloat. It's easy to think that these two things, the chaos in Washington and the strain on your wallet, are totally separate things. But what if I told you guys that they are two sides of the same coin, which is a coin that represents the economic pressure that millions of Americans are feeling right now? In tonight's show, we're going to break down what's really going on. First, we're going to demystify the temporary spending bill Congress is wrestling with, which is called the Continuing Resolution, a CR bill. And it's often the only thing that stands between business as usual and a full-blown shutdown. And that shutdown can halt paychecks and benefits for an extended quantity of individuals. And you got to understand, a lot of the budget does include like VA budgets and stuff to that effect, all the way down the line. So when and a lot of that stuff was supposed to be up this season. So if they didn't extend some of that stuff, then like veterans and elderly people and other stuff to that effect that's looking forward to their Social Security, disability, and everything like that would end up not getting it. That would suck, because then their houses wouldn't get paid for on time, their medical treatment wouldn't get paid for on time. So by them talking about these things right now and trying to get this stuff together, this prevents the largest majority of people in need from being cut off where they have no other option. Trader says, I just learned that there is a way to structure a irrevocable trust before marriage that separates assets without telling the potential wife. I have to tell you before I forgot. Okay, I'll double check about that, but it is, from what I understand, the problem you have with setting up an irrevocable trust the problem you have with setting up an irrevocable trust when you start dating is that if your partner is not already under contract in a girlfriend contract or whatever, they're going to claim that they contributed to your livelihood, which contributed to that trust. Before you move her into your house, if you put all of your assets into an irrevocable trust, you don't got to tell her about the irrevocable trust, as long as you stop contributing to the irrevocable trust. And the reason being is that in a domestic scenario, if nobody documents where the money is supposed to be allocated to, the division of assets, the problem is that it can be assumed that she gave you money that you benefited from, and you use that money that you benefited from and put it towards your trust. So you create an irrevocable trust. You put all the assets that you want in it. You put all the money that you want in it. Everything, stocks, options, everything you don't want her to touch, you put that into the irrevocable trust, and then stop adding to the trust, right? Then you move her in, y'all start sharing resources. If y'all don't have a contract, you don't own anything, you just use the stuff. Then if y'all break up, she can't have none of it because none of it belongs to you, right? Now, the other thing is that if you decide that y'all are dating for 2 or 3 years and then you decide to build the irrevocable trust before the wedding, she could have contributed to your livelihood, which means she could have contributed to your car note, she could have contributed to the furniture in your house, she could have bought you a new pair of shoes, she could have bought the stuff that you've got, she could have gave you the down payment for your house, she could have contributed to your lifestyle. If you was to right before marriage try to throw the stuff into an irrevocable trust, if you can't prove that she didn't contribute to the creation of the trust, she could still have a really good lawyer come through and knock that down. So if you get her to sign a prenuptial agreement and you include the irrevocable trust in the prenuptial agreement where she is aware and agrees that the stuff that you put into that irrevocable trust, she's not going to come after, waiving her right to take legal action on that, then you're able to have that irrevocable trust before marriage. But that requires a prenuptial agreement. If she doesn't do that, then you're putting yourself in a compromising position and wasting a bunch of money, because it is not going to protect your assets from a really good lawyer if she decides that she wants to take everything, including the trust. He says that does make sense. So if you're late into the game, if you've already been dating for a couple years, if you're late into the game, first thing you want to do is get a girlfriend contract and start having her sign that and divide the assets up and make sure that everything is documented. And then the second thing you want to do is you want to move yourself into, if you're going to create a trust, have that trust listed as a non-accessible item, right? And then basically everything that you have in the girlfriend contract that has ownership capabilities, you put that into the trust, and she's already agreed that she can't have it, and then you put it into the trust and she can't have it. Date stamp document shows that she can't have it, and that's going to be how you can protect your assets. But we could talk about that on another day when we're talking about trust, since today we're talking about the government shutdown or the potential for the government shutdown, while we're also talking about some of the other things that, because I think you mentioned this before. If it wasn't you, it was somebody else that mentioned this before about the um, real estate developers was having some issues with people refinancing properties because of the interest rates going down. And today we're going to be talking about that because it didn't happen. So kind of wanted to do some myth busting today as it relates to governmental policies. So stay tuned with me, guys, and make sure that y'all continue to like and subscribe and mash those reaction buttons while y'all are here. Michael diving in late. Another shutdown. Why? It's not another shutdown. It's a preemptive steps to keep the shutdown from occurring. We just got started today. They're talking about the budget to make sure that the employees get paid, or have a budget set aside for the federal government employees to get paid before the government reaches the shutdown level. Because you have to understand that the current fiscal year budget or quarterly budget was supposed to be resolved by September 30th. And if they do not finish the budget by September 30th, then people will stop getting paid October 1st. The October bill or budget lasts until January 30th. And if they don't get that done, then we have a second shutdown. So if they can get the annual budget together where the employees get paid while they're arguing about everything else, then we won't have a situation. Because you have to realize, if federal agents stop coming to work, all of the local businesses that are subcontracted to the federal government stop working as well. The employees that were contracted or subcontracted by those third-party vendors are not going to get reimbursed for time lost at work due to the government shutdown. So that hurts a lot of families, millions of families, and millions of families that are not government agents, right? So them being able to talk about something that nobody is going to disagree with first and say, hey, let's get payroll out of the way, because nobody has an objection to payroll. It's just that payroll gets negatively impacted when we start talking about something like DHS funding, because they're running around with masks and doing drive-bys in New Jersey and stuff. When we're dealing with stuff like that, one person might say, well, yeah, they need to protect themselves. And the other person might say, yeah, they need to be held accountable too. So that argument might turn out to say, well, because it's part of the DOJ bill, it will negatively impact everybody, or not the DOJ bill, the DOD bill. It'll negatively impact everybody that gets paid from the DOD bill, and that includes the TSA agent that checks your bags at the airport. That includes the flight control guys that are laying in the planes. That includes like the people who do the extended search when the metal detectors go off. And if there's less people there to do that, you go from being able to get on your flight in less than an hour to spending 4 hours at the airport, potentially missing your flight or leaving a half a day early to get on the plane. And when people stop getting paid, people start calling out because they're not getting paid. And they got vacation time, sick days, all this other stuff built up. Some people can call in sick 2 or 3 times and then cash in on some essential pay and say, hey, I'm not coming in during the shutdown and use all of their time off to be exempt from showing up for work, even though they're salaried employees. They're not going to get a paycheck on it, but they're not going to be held responsible for not coming into work for 2 or 3 weeks either. Michael says, I see the potential for profits there. We might. It depends. It depends on how it works out because they haven't made a decision yet. They're supposed to be talking about it right now. So we're going to explain what this is and what it does, and just as important, what it doesn't do for you guys, right? Then we're going to shift to the other major force that is squeezing your finances, which is the Federal Reserve. While Congress is busy arguing, the Fed has been deliberately keeping interest rates high. And this isn't something that just happened. It is an active strategy with massive consequences for your credit card debt, your car loan, your mortgage, and even the interest you earn on your savings accounts, right? So by the end of this, you're going to understand the 2 powerful, distinct forces coming out of Washington that are shaping your financial realities. Now, one is about preventing immediate chaos, and the other is a long-term economic strategy that's making your money more expensive. These are the 2 stories we're talking about today that you absolutely need to grasp to navigate your finances today. Now, every year, the United States government is supposed to have a new budget ready, and it's supposed to be able to go into effect by October 1st. That's the start of the fiscal year, right? So think of it as the government's New Year's Day for money. In theory, the process is pretty orderly. The Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse, meaning that it's their job to decide how to spend taxpayer money. They do this through 12 separate appropriations bills, each covering a different area of government, from defense and education to agriculture and homeland security. Both the House and the Senate are supposed to pass all 12 bills, iron out any differences, and get them to the president to sign before midnight on September 30th. That's the theory. Okay. Now, it's usually a mess. That's the reality. Congress has only managed to get all its homework done on time, passing all 12 appropriations bills by October 1st 4 times in the last 4+ decades. So in almost 50 years, they've only been able to get it done without an issue 4 times. The last time that they got it done correctly was back in 1996 for the 1997 fiscal year. It's a level of dysfunction that has become shockingly normal. So what happens when they fail to meet their own deadlines? Well, to avoid the political and economic disaster, especially when we're looking at government shutdowns, they reach for their favorite emergency tool. It's called the continuing resolution, or CR. A continuing resolution is pretty much what it is supposed to sound like. It's a stopgap, a temporary law that says, let's just keep funding the government at last year's levels for a little while longer. It's basically Congress hitting the snooze button on its most fundamental duty. A CR is not a budget, okay? It doesn't set new priorities or make major new investments or cut anything that's not supposed to be there. That's not what it does. We would hope that it would do that, but that's not what it does. It's a legislative patch designed to buy more time for bickering and negotiating. That's what it's for. It's going to allow us to argue about this situation just a little bit longer. Now, as we often see, when the September 30th deadline gets close, lawmakers find themselves in that familiar rush to pass the CR and keep the lights on. It's a familiar story. They can just get kicked a little bit longer, throw it a little bit further down the road, and as we'll see, the timing of these new deadlines is rarely an accident. So when you hear politicians discussing a continuing resolution, you might hear the term clear CR. That sounds good. Doesn't give you any red flags. But clean is better than dirty. But in the context, a clean CR is one that mostly just extends existing funding. It avoids taking on controversial policy changes, often called poison pills, that would sink its chances of passing. The point of a clean CR is to be as boring as possible so it can pass quickly with support from both parties and prevent a shutdown. Now, in practice, a CR keeps government agencies funded at roughly the same level and under the same rules as the year before. It's like putting the government on autopilot for a few weeks, or in some situations, a few months. But roughly is a keyword, not a actual reinforcement scenario. Right? So these bills aren't always perfectly clean. They often have tweaks known as anomalies. Michael says, don't worry about it. Your grandkids will pay for it. Yeah. Well, basically, this generation is paying for something that happened 25 years ago. So yeah, pretty much every executive order kind of, you feel it. 25 years of enforcement, you feel it in the economy at that point. Some things are instant impact, but other things are not. Take, for example, they passed a law in 2021 that gave them legal authority to have like vital recognition in your vehicles, where they're tracking your cars, your video cameras, they're tracking your voice discussions and everything to that effect in your vehicle. They ordered that in 2021, and it has not gone into effect yet. And they just made it mandatory in 2026, 5 years later. So when things get voted into law, it doesn't always get voted directly into practice. Just like we just seen a Supreme Court ruling that made it clear that under Silencer Code and the other like gun agencies, members of the gun agencies and everything that signed up for like suppressors and bump stocks and everything to that effect, they don't have to register their equipment with ATF anymore, because the registration requirement was for taxed items, and these items aren't taxed anymore because the tax bill was reduced to zero. So the ruling was that since there is no tax bill to it, there is no tax no tax restriction that requires these items to be registered, but it only applies to the people inside of the civil action. So if you wanted to get a suppressor without having to register it, you can, but you got to wait until next week and make sure that they don't appeal. If they don't appeal the decision, then starting sometime next week, you have the capabilities of going to silencer code only until it becomes mandatorily enforced in law, and go and get your bump stock, your SBR, your silencer, and do it without having to get that ATF registration. Now, the problem is that in practice, it has been 20, 30, 40 years of police officers looking for that ATF registration. And if you don't have it, they will assume that you have an unauthorized item on your person that qualifies as a felony. Now, you would have to carry with you these days the Supreme Court ruling that says that you don't have to register that with this company, show the receipt that you bought it with this company, or show that you're a member of this gun group that was involved in that lawsuit to exclude you from that requirement for registration, which ultimately is the alternative paperwork to carrying that item than the ATF paperwork. Because if you have no paperwork with you, they're going to assume you did not acquire it lawfully because you didn't register the item, and they're going to arrest you for it, give you a charge for it. You're going to go to court for it. You're going to have to get bonded out of jail for it and pay a lot of money for it so that the judge can throw the case out. Even in California, Joe Jack, special shout out to Joe Jack. So the reason why I talk about that is because since it is not officially a law that is being practiced by all 50 states, it is something that we just found out about that is in fact starting to go into effect presumably this month. It does not mean that in the next 6 to 9 months that law enforcement is going to respect that judge's decision. On the street, you're going to get treated differently if you have your pistol with a suppressor on it as a permanent fixture of your firearm, and a police officer says, "Oh, he's got a suppressor." Everybody starts drawing down on you like you're a hitman or something. The fact, because it's not readily seen, and you have to understand that while the law is the law, people's feelings apparently dictate police behavior. So if somebody feels threatened by you minding your business walking down the street with a firearm because it looks dangerous, you don't have to be committing a crime. 25 police officers will harass you and torment you to force you to not make the public feel uncomfortable. That's not the law. That's not their job. But this is what the First Amendment auditors are fighting against, where the difference between my right to do something and your responsibility to ignore it. The same way we talked at the top of the show about the First Amendment constitutional right to disrespect people and your responsibility to ignore being disrespected because you do not have a constitutional right to be respected. But does that mean that they will ship one to California? If California allows you to ship stuff to your location, then if you buy it off the website, they should ship it to your local dealer. Whatever the federal level decisions do not impact state level decisions. So if your state outlaws the item, if your state requires extra paperwork, then your state level rules is going to still apply. But on a federal level, you don't got to do that. So if there's no law on a state level that says that you have to do that, then you officially don't have to do that. But if the item, like certain states are outlawing suppressors, if you are traveling through a state that outlaws suppressors, how you doing, Wayne? If you are going through states that are outlawing suppressors, at the end of the day, you're still traveling with a weapon that or an item attached to a weapon that you're not supposed to have in that state. And even if you are a visitor of the state, you can still be charged because you're not supposed to be in the jurisdiction of that state with that item because it's outlawed in that jurisdiction. So you just got to pay attention to your local laws before you decide to make any decisions. He says, I don't want one, but if I did, I think I would rather register it to avoid the conflict. Well, there's a difference between the ATF paperwork that is completely different from the actual, like, I own this kind of thing. So you have a base level of paperwork that shows that this belongs to a certain person. Like when you go to the dealership, you buy a pistol, and the pistol has a serial number, and the serial number says that that pistol belongs to that person. That's a different type of registration as notifying the feds with another piece of paper that says, oh, by the way, I bought this item. That's a different kind of registration, and that's the registration we're talking about. It's the equivalent of buying your car, registering your car, and then taking extra paperwork to send to the federal government to say, hey, I am one of the people that have this vehicle, so that they now can follow you around and monitor the fact that you have that vehicle. They didn't know before you filled out that form, but now they know. Who owns it versus telling ATF, hey, keep a record of my firearm. That's two different things. And the tax stamp required them to keep a record of your firearm. Not having that tax stamp prevents them from having the requirement to keep a record of your firearm. So it's still going to be on a base level assigned to you, where if the firearm or the firearm accessory was involved in a crime, the police run the serial number, your name will come back to that item. It is not going to be a situation where ATF will knock on your door and say, hey, I've got a letter that says you have like 54 items in your house on this list, and I want to check and make sure that they're stored properly. That's a different thing. You're not going to be on that list, right? Unless you do it that way. I wouldn't do it that way. I don't want them to know what the fuck I got. The least amount of knowledge that they can get, the better for me, right? But as it pertains to the government shutdown and monitoring the bill, this is going to give specific agencies a little bit more funding to deal with for any urgent problems that they would have, like topping off a disaster relief fund after a hurricane, or making sure that critical programs don't stall out, like Social Security, disability, veterans benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, stuff to that effect, right? But here's the most important political detail of almost any CR. Its expiration date. It has an expiration date. Often these bills are timed to push the next big funding fight past a major political event, like this year's midterm election. This is a calculated strategy. Neither party wants a messy government shutdown dominating the news right before people vote for midterms. That kind of chaos is unpredictable and could anger voters, hurting the party seen as responsible. By setting a new deadline for this particular election, since the election is supposed to be in November, they push the budget back to December. Everybody gets paid until after they vote. They're basically calling a temporary political truce so that they can keep their jobs. And then they're going to go back to fighting each other after you either voted them back in or abstained your vote and allowed them to keep their jobs. Which I recommend that we should have a whole new regime of new blood, and we should go ahead and do our research and find who's been there 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and then vote them out for somebody who's never been in there. That's what I believe. I believe that we should have a whole new 500 and something group of people in Congress, all new blood, or as much new blood as possible, so that the old heads can like retire, and some new like Gen Zs and millennials or get in there and start doing some different stuff. That's what I think. But I appreciate the likes, guys. Make sure that you continue to mash those reaction buttons and show support for the channel. But that since very few of us vote and very few of us actually apply, they have some people that go unopposed. But after the election, if nobody's voted against, they keep their seat. So they're choosing to have the budget battle later, after voters have decided on who holds the power. No, you're not doing that, Jimmy. That doesn't work that way, buddy. Because if that was the case, you would have just sent it to me. Now, this is going to tell you guys a lot about how Washington works. The top priority often isn't passing a responsible long-term budget. It's about navigating the political calendar and avoiding any self-inflicted wounds during campaign seasons, right? So while the CR is solid, it's sold as a responsible way to avoid crisis. It's also deeply political, and it's going to move people in a way that allows for them to not get uh, compromised, basically procuring their goals and their objectives. Stephen says that I think 2-year limits would work way better than lifelong, but they are 2-year limits. That's the problem. Every 2 years, we're supposed to be voting for new congressmen. But the problem that we have is that not too many people are voting. And the ones that do vote are I'm gonna vote Republican because I'm a Republican, even though that doesn't benefit them because they live like a Democrat, right? So since they don't know who's in office, they don't know the policies those people represent, they do not actively participate in political changes, so they cannot verify if their representatives represent them correctly. At the end of the day, nobody really cares who's in office, but the 500 something people that are in there seemingly indefinitely has their job reevaluated every 2 years. If you don't like the way they've been performing, you vote them out. And November is the time that you do that. So in a few months. So if you didn't like the way the government's behaved the last 12 months with the 2 shutdowns between October and January, where you had a month and a half off between October and November of 2025, and 3 months off between January and March of 2026, then you should vote everybody out that's in there right now. Right? But we don't. It's going to be the same people every year. And a lot of times, after they sit in one specific seat, they'll run for a different seat. And it's crazy. Like, I was seat 104 last 2 years. This year, I'm seat 22. I'm still in the same room, on the same side of the room. I'm still on the even side of the room. It makes no sense. You said that, yes, if we all effectively put in that same effort, yes, you would only be allowing one person to sit in the same chair for 2 years. That's the rule. But if you don't vote, or if not enough people vote, then that 2 years turns into 20 years. That sometimes 40 years. And the only time that you see a change is when the president makes changes. Now, if and when the continuing resolution is passed and gets signed, the biggest effect for most Americans is what doesn't happen. A shutdown is avoided and a fragile sense of normalcy continues. So let's be really clear about what happens and what that means. First, hundreds of thousands of federal employees keep going to work, and most importantly, keep getting their paychecks on time. This includes everyone from the FBI agents, air traffic control, food safety inspectors, scientists. It also means active duty military personnel like the ones in Iran around the world are still getting paid without a problem, which means that they can continue to send money back home. But beyond that, the core government functions that people count on every day will continue. Social Security Administration will keep processing applications and sending out benefits checks. It's important to know that Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare benefit payments themselves are funded through a mandatory spending bill. So they aren't stopped all the time by a shutdown. However, the continuing resolution ensures that the agency's operations don't get disrupted. So to prevent the checks from not being sent out, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to process the paperwork, right? Now, the staff who answers the phone and processes new claims are going to be able to keep working, preventing huge blockages and delays, and that's something that we need to see. Our other essential services also get to continue. Veterans can still access their health care and their benefits, SNAP benefits, which helps feed millions of Americans, will continue to be issued, and the mail will continue to get delivered without an issue. National parks will continue to stay open. Y'all seen the national parks got shut down this year. The mail kept running, but the parks got shut down, right? No barbecue. We got Veterans Day coming up, Labor Day coming up. Y'all understand what's going on, right? Passport services, which is very important for people who are trying to renew, people who are either coming back into the country or leaving out of the country, especially right now while immigration is so heavy with deportation. You do not want to be gridlocked in a passport renewal situation where your passport is expired, right? This is a huge machine of federal governments that get to keep running if they pass the continuing resolution bill. But we got to be clear about what it doesn't do. It doesn't create new programs or expand the old ones. It doesn't give a cost of living raise to federal workers beyond what's already scheduled because it is last year's budget. So if this year's expenses hurt a whole lot more because of the 2.5% tariff increase that raises from 10% to 12.5%, on top of the high oil prices because we're still attacking Iran, that inflation outside of normal social norms is going to increase our cost of living, and the last year's budget is not going to modify the increase in this year's cost of living, right? It does not increase Social Security checks or boost food assistance. A continuing resolution is all about maintaining the status quo, keeping things the way they were. It's a pause button, not a play button for new policies. It's stability, but it's a frozen kind of stability, right? So to really get why Congress scrambles to pass these temporary bills, you have to look at the alternative, the government shutdown. If y'all weren't paying attention to it while I was covering it on this live podcast, y'all gonna be paying attention to it now. What actually happens when a government shuts down? We hear the phrase so often that it loses its meaning, but the consequences are real and disruptive. A shutdown happens when there's a lapse in appropriations, which is a fancy way of saying Congress fails to approve spending, which means they don't allow people to get paid anymore, right? Because of a law called the Anti-Deficiency Act. Federal agencies are forbidden from spending money that they don't already have beyond the blank check that Donald Trump wrote to the conflict in Iran. So when the funding runs out for programs that already exist, they have to start shutting down. It's not like the whole government just flips off. It's a partial shutdown. Government work is split into two buckets, essential workers and non-essential workers. The essential services will be those that are needed to protect life and property. They are going to be allowed to continue without pay. This is going to include active duty military, law enforcement, air traffic control, and benefits payments like Social Security, disability, and potentially VA payments, right? The people who do these jobs are going to be deemed essential. They're going to be deemed essential. So, like I said, during the entire shutdown, while they might get reimbursed after the budget is released, you will find that many of these workers will be working without pay. They're guaranteed to get that money eventually, but they have to find a way to survive without it while still having the money to get to and from work until they get their paycheck in any number of months. Last year in October, it was 6 weeks. This year in January, it was 12 weeks. So Google's asked, is Trump a bad guy? Well, that's a loaded question because, I mean, you want me to really identify the personality or the decision-making skills of 1 out of 500 something people who are the fundamental top of the decisions for policies. Now, the problem with trying to answer that particular type of question is that there's 300 something million other Americans that are supposed to be voting on these exact same policies, and we either fail to vote or we just don't have a uniformed agreement as to which direction that the country is supposed to go. Which means that you're now trying to determine, is one person out of 300 something million Americans perceivably good or bad in comparison to the 300 something million Americans who failed to do their part. I'm going to be honest with you. You're asking the wrong question. Are the rest of us underproductive in our involvement in local and federal government, which is why we are not satisfied with the performance of our local and federal government? Because if you live in a neighborhood with trash all over the ground, you got homies that you hang with that'll throw their bag of chips on the ground, throw a cup out the window. When they finish with their blunt wrap, they throw it on the ground. When they finish smoking, they throw their cigarettes and their cigarette butts on the ground. They just throw trash on the ground. Wind catches that stuff and it just takes it down the road. Now you live in a neighborhood that is covered in trash. When have you ever gone outside with a garbage bag and just started picking up trash on the side of the road while you weren't on community service with a security guard following you? The average person that lives in a neighborhood that is covered in trash contributes to that trash, does not contribute to cleaning up that trash, but then complains about how their neighborhood is trashy, and they're going to blame the government. It's not the government, it's the people. Okay, the government is a entity, right? It is not an active entity. It's an entity, but it is identified that way as a collective of several people involved in a performance. So if the government sucks, the people that the government works for are failing to do their part. This isn't a conspiracy where it's a dictatorship where there's 501 people running over 300 something million Americans, because then you got to understand that every philosophy about numbers games, why are 300 something million people allowing themselves to be oppressed by 500? There's more of us than them. We should be able to get what we want. So is it him or is it us? Think about this for a second, guys, and make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and mash those reaction buttons. Now, the non-essential employees who are furloughed, basically meaning they're put on temporary unpaid leave. They're not fired. They still have a job. They're just not allowed to go to work, and they're not getting paid for it, which is a terrifying position to be in, because you cannot find a temporary employment somewhere else not knowing which day they're going to call you back to work. You got to try to find yourself some kind of side hustle or set you up some kind of instant cash flow method, which I've been giving you guys every few days, every couple of weeks, different ways to make money off of the computer, to start up a second income, to prevent something like this from happening. But until you do, if that's your only source of income, if your spouse has a job, you're now living on his or her income, because your government income is not coming in and you can't go to work. Yes, you get a vacation, you get to stay at home and rest and relax, but you don't get any money, which means you can't buy food, you can't feed your kids, you can't pay for daycare, you can't do all of the things that you otherwise would have done, and you don't know how long this is going to last. And they're going to be legally barred from working, meaning that they're not allowed to go back to at least the United States government. This is going to be where the public starts to feel the shutdown more directly, because in the past, this has meant national parks and museums closing their gates, long delays for passports, and a pause on many scientific research projects that could potentially damage the research project in a way that forces them to start over and set us back 50, 60, 70 years, where we're not able to reach the results that we would have reached had we not stopped them from continuing to work. Steven says that membership is something all should consider well worth it. Oh yeah, man, you see how much stuff going on? You seen what was rolling out this week, huh? Before the show even aired, we got content releasing for the upcoming shows where you're like, damn, you got the walkthroughs out already. You got step-by-step guides on how to fix your situation, navigate change, improve stuff. I can't give you guys all of the information for all 50 states. I would have a larger database than Google if I did that. But the things that directly impact your ability to make, save, and invest money is there's a lot of the things that's going in there. Uh, Asa, I'm doing okay. But I'm not a unk. I understand that that's y'all young boy slang, but when you come onto an adult podcast with adults, you speak respectfully towards adults. Sir is how you address me, not unk, not OG. That is inappropriate to come to an adult podcast with looks like thousands of uh, adults that are here with the mentality of being successful, self-sustainable, self-improving. So we not here running the streets, my guy. We are here to learn and be better because this is a public knowledge that not a lot of people in the public know about, right? And I'm letting you guys know the ins and outs of what's going on so that y'all can make better decisions. Because if there's something in your life that you don't like, things that suck, that you want to see improved, I definitely provide you. I do the research on it, then I provide you guys with the information that y'all need to be able to navigate certain changes and stuff that's coming up. Since I'm giving you the heads up on it, I'm not a right wing or left wing something or other that's going to sit here and just badmouth somebody. I'm actually coming through and letting you guys know, hey, this is how your money is going to be impacted within the next 30 days. And that gives you the opportunity to make certain decisions that changes the way you are supposed to operate. Now, I just told him, don't call me Unc, and you come up there with the same thing. So I'm going to make you go away. He said, my bad. So you're right. That's on me. You have a good one. Take care. Yes, I appreciate you coming through. By all means, you guys can comment in the comment section, but this is a male-driven podcast from the male's perspective, where we are teaching people how to become higher value individuals, not just by improving their income, but also improving their decision-making skills. And one of the things that's going to make you successful in life is if you naturally come with the mutual respect from the old school, because old money, wealthy individuals are not going to have respect for you when you walk up and call somebody Unc or OG. Let's be real. In business, you lose the deal when you walk up and call somebody Unc or OG. So as young bucks, y'all trying to get in here and make a name for yourselves with your finances, not trying to make a name for yourselves in the streets, trying to get street cred and stuff. When you start maturing, usually happening in your late 20s, early 30s, when you start trying to make a name for yourself financially, you're going to want to be respected. And the only way that you can do that is if you walk into the room with respect. Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I don't know why parents ain't teaching that and reinforcing that, but we need to go back to that, right? Now, let's go ahead and dive back into what we were talking about. The economic damage can be serious when we start dealing with government shutdowns, right? So a 2019 report from Congressional Budget Office estimated that a 35-day partial shutdown that year cost the United States economy about $11 billion, with $3 billion of that permanently lost. Now, this past year, we had, like I said, 3 months. So you can imagine 3 times more of that was lost this year in 2026, right? So beyond the top line numbers, businesses seeking federal permits face delays. Economic data that investors rely on might not be released. So when we're checking the stats of the stocks that we're following, if the government shuts down, people stop reporting, which means we don't know, which means now we're flying blind in our investment opportunities. So when we talk about dodging a shutdown, this is the chaos that's being avoided. So at this point, you might be asking the fair question. If the shutdowns are so disruptive and unpopular, why does it keep happening? Why can't the most powerful country on earth pass a budget on time? The answer is a toxic mix of political polarization and procedural breakdowns and strategic gamesmanship. The budget process has morphed from a serious job of governing into a high stakes political battlefield where leverage is everything. You guys have to understand, passing a budget requires compromise. But in today's hyper-partisan world, compromise is often painted as weakness. So what we recognize is like, for example, last year, Donald Trump wanted something passed. He didn't sign off on anything. We had to shut down in October, right? The Democrats didn't want ICE agents murdering American citizens. They didn't agree to the budget for ICE agents because they were murdering American citizens, and more accountability and more protective measures were needed to be made. So the budget didn't get passed till almost March. And it was what, 2 or 3 months after that when they finally got to the Department of Defense bill, right? Donald Trump had to sign off on reallocating funds from somewhere else to cover TSA agents, so that, and other agents that were under the DOD bill, because the Democrats were like, no, we're not going to continue to allow our American people to get knocked off by ICE agents, who ironically are also American people who got subcontracted to come and acquire non-American people. And I find that to be some of the funniest things, but it's the most messed up scenario to be in, because why? The average person who retired military or whatever the case may be might find themselves in a position where they do not like being mistreated when they travel, getting harassed by police officers, border patrol, whatever the case may be. Then you get drafted to come and do this one big beautiful bill, and now you're on the opposite side of the fence, and now you feel like this is the time to Scarface your way through the metropolitan. Why? You know, and they're acting reckless. It is almost like they believe that they finally got that 007 license to kill thing, and they want to go out there and take advantage of it. And accountability is not able to be held, because a lot of them that are misbehaving like that are riding around with masks on their face, so you can't point them out in the crowd, right? But truth is, while Republicans say that Democrats are idiots, Democrats are the ones that are saying unmask those agents. Show us who they are, so that when they beat up somebody that doesn't belong, that doesn't supposed to get beat up, we can hold them accountable. When they shoot at somebody they're not supposed to shoot at, we can hold them accountable. We can remove the bad apples from the batch so that the good apples can get the damn job done. And I think that we need both sides, but I do believe that Democrats are not as dumb as people say they are, because the Republicans were letting everybody get slaughtered. And they're like, oh, let's pay them more. I don't know if y'all know this, but there was a discussion in Congress where they actually talked about how the DOD agents were getting a $45,000 a year bonus on their $45,000 a year check. I want you to marinate on that for a little bit. Imagine there's a few 100,000 of y'all watching me right now, and I want you to imagine, think your salary, whatever it is right now, whatever you do for a living, doesn't matter. Imagine the person next to you getting paid double just because they show up for work. Is that fucked up or not? I'm going to be honest with you. It should not be that way. We get like a $2,500 Christmas bonus or something like that. We might get an annual something or other. We might get like a $500 bonus for increase in sales or something like that. Not a $45,000 bonus for an entry level position. We're not talking about CEOs. We're not talking about the guys at the top of the ladder. We're not talking about agents that's been in the force for 25 years. We're talking about the folks that used to be working at Walmart till their number got called, and now they're putting on a military uniform and they're out there acting bad like super troopers with AK-47s, right? That's what we're talking about. And they're getting a $45,000 bonus. For what? You didn't even get the right people. You knocked off what we have right now, 4, 5 different American citizens that lost their life while we were capturing a bunch of non-Americans. And to be fair, profiling is everything. I'm going to be honest with you. I can tell what a non-American looks like. Very rarely, if they look like me or one of my neighbors, would they not be American? Right? But we can always agree that if they don't know how to speak the language, they more often than not are not from around these here parts. Right? Now, the September 30th deadline has become a weapon. And y'all seen Donald Trump use it effectively last year and use it effectively again on January 30th. It creates a moment of maximum pressure where one party or even a small group of lawmakers can threaten to shut down the government to force consensus on other issues. Because what happens is that they don't give you a one level bid. Jesse Talks came on here onto the show, I think last week or the week before, and talked about that. They don't talk about just one thing in a bill. A bill will have more than one issue on that bill. The bill will have one title on it. And if you vote for the bill, you agree to everything in it. If you disagree with one thing on the line item, everything else gets rejected. And that's what happened with the government shutdown last year, where the TSA agents weren't getting paid because the ICE agents weren't supposed to get paid. But the problem was that the big beautiful bill gave them, I think, 2 years worth of funding for ICE agents. So when the Democrats said no to more funding for the ICE agents, they effectively said no to more funding for the airport staff because it was all in the same bill. That's how this works. So when somebody says, if you don't pass my bill, we're shutting down the government, it happens because if there's one thing here that doesn't benefit the majority of people, everything else that would be otherwise good can't happen because you put what we call the poisonous fruit into what would otherwise be a clean bill. Steven says Philly has a lot of Spanish speaking Americans, but you got to understand there's a difference between a Spanish speaking American and a person who knows no English. How long have you lived in America if you have absolutely no knowledge of the English language? That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about like, oh, you moved here 15, 20 years ago, you know the language, you should be here, blah, 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 blah. But that's the people they're picking up. But for the most part, we're talking about like true to life. If a neighbor moved into my neighborhood right now and I walked up to this person and they're speaking a completely different language, like fluently, where there's no way that they're able to translate it to English, it lets me know they're not from around here. Now, let's say somebody from another country got their passport or their green card or their citizenship, they come to my country, they speak English, but they have a heavy accent. You learned the language, then you came here. I would assume that they are I would assume that they are the individuals that would have had some legal authority to be here at some point. But that doesn't change the fact that even if you did come here on a student visa and got expelled from school, didn't get a job, 30 days later, you're supposed to leave. You used to belong here, but now you don't. Like take that one student that failed to renew her student visa. She was flying back home to visit family for the holidays, got deported at the airport. So now she's banned. She can't finish college. If you don't do your paperwork, you can get in trouble. That's the people that ICE is supposed to be going after. So the concern that we have is when they come in and when they come in and go after people who clearly speak English, knows the Constitution, articulates the Constitution. Foreigners don't know that stuff. So we have a pessimist here that is trying to heckle the show, not speaking clear English either. Um, you didn't speak English when you got here, so what are you talking about? You learned the language of your suppressors. Um, I think you're coming from a racial standpoint where you're trying to claim that minorities that came over from the slave ships didn't speak the British language or European language when in back in the 1800s. But I can tell you that I was born here like 41 years ago, so I've always speak English. um, and you're not actually speaking the language of your oppressor because you have to recognize that you volunteered to come here in 2026. You weren't forced to come here in 2026. You weren't forced to come here in 2025. Forced relocation, forced geo arbitrage has not happened in over 200 years. So you're actually wrong about that, sir. Uh, People choose to come to America because they're fed the American dream from media and advertisement that America is so great. America is like 130 something of the 200 something countries that are identified in the world. So out of 200 something countries, or if we say like I think like 175 officially recognized countries, and then there's another like 50 something of them that are not involved in NATO, something to that effect. You're still looking at we're the bottom 50%, right? Of greatest countries, right? That's like saying I'm the smartest kid in school, but I'm rocking D's all the time. I got a 1.0 GPA, but I'm the smartest kid in school. We're the bottom 25% of everything that's considered a great country. Now, yes, more money flows through America than any other country in the world, right? We spend the most money. We have the largest quantity of debt, right? Inflation happens because we make enough money to pay for it, right? But at the end of the day, people choose to come here. And since they choose to come here, they're not forced to come here. And up until Donald Trump made it a law that says that you must know English in order to function here, where tests are no longer being given in multiple languages, driving exams and everything like that are no longer being given in multiple languages. They're forcing people to adapt to the country that they come to instead of forcing the country to adapt to the people that come here because the people come here by choice. Illegal immigration is people voluntarily coming here without doing the proper paperwork so that they can exist here because this is where they chose to be. So I don't agree with you when you say that they need to they're learning the language of their suppressor. No, you're not. You're learning the language of the natives because the 200 something thousand Americans, 200 something thousand Mexicans that came to America every month during the Biden administration, they did that by choice. Got asylum, got funding, got housing, all of this stuff, and they chose to come here. You need to know English in order to communicate with the people that are here. You need to read English in order to sign contracts and do deals here. So we're not pressing you when you came here because you didn't have to come here, right? So you got to think about what you're talking about there. Okay, he says, but you're not English though. You have a nationality everyone has. So I was born in the US, my skin is dark, and I'm Jewish. I'm a Jew. What does that got to do with anything? So what you're saying is that I'm not English. Are you talking about like British descent? Actually, when we start talking about historically speaking, um, everybody that is the descendant of the slave campaign would have a slave owner in their family tree that would not be from South Africa or North Africa or Nigeria or something like that. And ultimately, we would all have some level of German, Britain, something to that effect in our family tree. So there's no reason for you to assume that I'm not. Oh, of course, I'm not full blooded something or other. I'm not supposed to be full blooded anything because you got to understand America is a melting pot of culture. It's a melting pot of races, right? And 250 years melting pot of races. Very few of us are pure anything unless you're first generation. Because if you're second generation and one of your parents is from here and the other parent is not, there is a large percentage of you that is not. So I don't understand what your point is. But you're gonna say that I'm low level. Well, America is at a low level. Culturally, we're at a low level. You act like you're European. No, I act like I'm educated because I am educated. So it's not actually an act. I'm performing a role that I have established from extensive research after almost 10 years of college. So let's go back and get to. I appreciate you trying, my guy. I thought that you were going to stay on topic, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next side of things because this is going to bring us back to the continuing resolution. The continuing resolution is going to be the escape hatch when things don't go according to plan in politics. It lets both sides step back a little bit from the edge without losing face with the government. And then it allows for them to put their efforts into something else. So by relying on the CR, Congress avoids the hard work of passing a real budget. It still fuels a little bit of dysfunction, but it prevents them from having to pass a full budget. And that's one of the things that not a lot of people can see. I'm looking at y'all trolling on both sides of the T today. I'm gonna be blocking 1 million people today. Hit that ban button on who? I hit the ban button on one guy. Was there who else needs to be banned? I didn't see that there was another comment in the comment section that needed to be blocked. I'm looking. I blocked that guy outright, Steven. Oh, I ain't doing timeouts, man. I'm not gonna give him a 10-minute timeout. I'm gonna give him a full-on ban, bro. They wilding out. They could get a full-on ban. He's at 10 years of college. Are you? Yeah, 10 years of college. I'm doing full-on bans on people. And I see people on TikTok side of things that guy above us in the chat. Oh yeah, I got rid of him. I got rid of him completely. So I don't know if it took his comments out of the comment section, but I definitely got rid of him because that's just ridiculous. We need people that are going to behave respectfully and appropriately because we're about to learn something here. You got him 24 hours. I appreciate that, man. Anybody, because it might have one in one of the comment sections where a dude is just like trolling one message at a time, messing up the whole chat thing. Oh yeah, just block that guy. Get rid of him. Now, instead of the government passing a real budget to satisfy everybody, they just punt the problem a few months down the road, often to another high stakes deadline right before a holiday, hoping that the pressure will still force the deal. Sometimes they end up jamming all 12 spending bills into one giant ominous bill, which we talked about the ominous bill with Jesse Talks a while back because he was claiming that one of the politicians that was running for governor in, I think, Tennessee or Minnesota or something like that, always passes a bunch of ominous bills. An ominous bill is going to be something that has thousands of pages of long drawn out laws and partisans and everything like that, all dropped into one document only a day or two timeline for you to be able to read it, concentrating immense power in the hands of a very few quantity of leaders, which ultimately gets a lot of things that we wasn't expecting to get done, right? Now, this whole drama, the brinkmanship, the shutdown, the threats of the shutdowns, the last minute fixes is a symptom of the broken system that prioritizes political strategies over responsible government. Now, make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and match these reaction buttons as we keep going, because we got probably another 45 to 50 minutes of this, and we're going to be wrapping it up because we got the other half of this thing that I want to talk to you guys about that's very important. So we're halfway through, so stay with me. We just took a deep dive into the messy worlds of government funding and the political games that put our economy at risk. So I want to make sure that if you find any of this helpful and you want more clarity, no nonsense explanations of any of the news that affects your money, you got to make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel on TikTok and then over there on the YouTube channel, because we give you guys all of the political support free news, because I'm going to tell you how it is from the average individual. I'm not going to be providing you with information as a supporter of one side or another. So as soon as a Republican comes in and tells me something about how Democrats are dumb, I got to show him, hey, hold on. Both sides are equally responsible for the failures of our economy. But the rest of us who are not voting responsibly are part of the reason why we have certain political parties that have people that are not supposed to be there. So, accountability across the board. So I'm going to be giving you guys facts and news and information that you need. But it is not designed in any way, shape, or form to sway your political opinion. It is strictly about how your money is impacted and what you need to do to adapt to what's about to happen. Like, for example, anybody who works for the federal government who recognizes that the shutdown could potentially happen in the next 45 days, you might start wanting to advance pay all of your bills, because if it is likely that a shutdown happens October 1st and more than likely lasts until November 15th, like it did last year, if you paid 2 months of bills in advance with whatever money you got right now, you would have 2 extra months before the shutdown starts hurting your bottom line. That's the kind of stuff I talk to you guys about. And why do I tell you to pay your bills in advance instead of putting it into a bank account? Because in a bank account, you have the responsibility to allocate funds in an emergency. If you already advance paid the bills, they owe you services. So when you don't have money, you're guaranteed to the service, and you can still take the money in your bank account and allocate it towards emergencies. That's a different way of thinking that not everybody thinks about. If you work for the government and you're going to have 3 unpaid months, all of your bills should be 95 days in advance. That way you still got 5 extra days to get your paycheck. Think about that. Michael says, didn't we just over this last year before the holidays, government shutdown? Yes, sir. October 1st to November 15th. And then another one, I told you guys it was going to happen. Another one that happened January 31st until I think April 20th. I think they drug it out, because it was like a 3-month scenario. The last president who didn't have government shutdown was George W. Bush. Yes, sir. Better double your emergency fund. So make sure that you guys like and subscribe and stay on top of that, because we're going to get into some of the rest of these things. Now, we're going to switch gears, because the drama in Congress is only half of the story that we're talking about today. There is another quiet force in Washington that's having an even bigger impact on your bank accounts right now. While politicians in Congress are loud and their fights are public, another institution in Washington holds immense power over your financial life. And right now, with the laws that are being changed for real estate development and the laws that are being changed for home ownership, this one is very important for all of the Americans who should have been following this channel last year when I was telling y'all how to fix y'all credit, so that y'all can improve your credit score, so that y'all can get those loans, so that y'all can get, or not the loan, the mortgage, so that y'all can get the house, right? That way you can move out of an unstable environment of rental property to a stable environment of home ownership, right? This is going to be a more quieter overhaul, but it is still a more direct impact on your life. And this is going to be the Federal Reserves or the Feds, not the FBI agents. How do you mortgage your middle name? Well, you have to, first of all, turn your middle name into a business, and then you have to build a brand that has monetary value, and then you leverage that for capital. That's how you do that. But stay on topic. That's your last warning. The Fed is America's central bank. It's a job that is designed to keep the economy on track through what is called dual mandates, promoting maximum employment and maintaining stable pricing. You're going to have to save that for another day. We're not talking about Israel today. In plain English, it tries to keep the economy strong enough for people to find jobs, but not so high that inflation runs wild and eats away at the value of your money. Right? So we're gonna mute you, my boy. I'm not gonna block you today, but I'm gonna mute you for not staying on topic today. Now, Steven says Ronald Reagan holds the most government shutdowns with 8. Yeah, but wasn't he sitting in office for a long time? Though they were short. Yeah, back in the day, they didn't have a lot to argue about. Donald Trump wants to pass this bill about legislation. Not legislation, about voting privileges. So think of the Feds as the economy's primary mechanic. So when things are slushy, it can step on the gas. When the economy is overheated and prices are rising too fast, it can tap on the brakes, right? What if the main tool in the Fed's toolbox was not being used correctly, which is the federal funds rates? This is going to be the interest rates that banks charge each other for overnight loans. You and I will never borrow at that rate. And I think that is where somebody got it mixed up when we were talking on a show a little while ago, where they were claiming that people were remortgaging things at the, there goes Michael, Federal Reserve at 3.5 to 3.75. But that is how the government trades to one another. That's not our interest rate. Our interest rate is double that. Our interest rate is between 6 and 7% when we're mortgaging houses. Our interest rate on vehicles might be anywhere between 8 and 14%. Our interest rate for student loans are between, well, it used to be like 5 to 9%. Now that they've privatized it, anything that's not coming directly from your school is likely to be double that. We're not borrowing at 3.5%. Even the VA 40-year fixed mortgage at 2.5% only happens after you refinance because you are qualifiable for foreclosure, where you've missed a couple payments on your mortgage, and now you're getting onto this fixed income situation that stretches out your loan, starts it over, and then charges you less money so that you can pay for your house without losing your house, to keep veterans from becoming homeless. But that is an emergency mortgage scenario. It is not a standardized used scenario right now. So that 2.5% mortgage does not exist for the average individual. The average individual has a market rate fixed 30-year mortgage for 6 to 6.5%. So somebody was on a show the other day or a couple of weeks ago trying to claim that, people are remortgaging their properties because the interest got cut. No, it didn't. I watched that and I cover that on the show every quarter, right? So this is going to be the foundation for almost every other interest rate in the economy. So when the Feds raise or lower it, a ripple effect goes through the entire financial system. The prime rate, which banks offer their best corporate customers, closely tracks the Fed's rates. And the prime rate is the benchmark used to set the interest on tons of consumer products, especially variable rate credit cards and home equity loans, home equity line of credits, or HELOCs, right? So when the Feds make a move, the cost of carrying a balance on your credit card can change almost right away. If the Feds increase interest rates, your variable interest rates will increase on your next month's billing cycle, right? If they lower it, there might be a delay in the reduction of interest, which will be a delay in the reduction of fees. But when they increase it, you experience an immediate increase. If they reduce interest rates, you might see a delay, but you might see a reduction in the interest rates on buying a home. But once you get put into that 30-year contract, it doesn't matter what the interest rates are unless you refinance. So if for some reason they drop interest rates down to say 3% or 2.5% Fed level, which might drop the interest rates for loans down to like 5% or 5.5%. In order for you to benefit from that 5.5%, you would have to remortgage your house, right? Because you are in a fixed contract. Now, if interest rates go up, it doesn't impact you because you're on a fixed contract. But if you want to benefit from the decline, you have to remortgage your house. In recent times, to fight high inflation, the Feds has been aggressively tapping the brakes by raising interest rates to make borrowing more expensive. The goal was to slow down spending and cool off the demand and bring inflation back towards the 2% target. Now, the big question is, what are they doing today? Well, after a period of aggressive rate hikes to fight inflation, everyone from Wall Street investors to families planning their budgets is watching to see what the Feds are supposed to do next. Will they start cutting rates to make borrowing cheaper, or will they hold it firm? At a recent meeting, the Federal Reserve has often made a clear choice to hold steady. And their recent meeting was like last week, I think. So this isn't a rate hike, but a crucially critical scenario where it is not a rate cut either. It is a deliberate decision to keep the policy restrictive. Why do this? The Feds officially are usually clear in their political statements. While inflation may have come down from its peak, they worry about cutting rates too soon, only to see prices flare back up. We have to recognize we're seeing a rise actually in inflation because of geopolitical conflict. That is unexpected inflation. That is not normal. We're going to see the rise of inflation from tariffs. That might become standard and normal, at least until Donald Trump gets out of office. We are going to experience a fluctuation in real estate because of the new laws that just came out. We're going to experience a fluctuation in automotives because of the new laws that came out, right? But we cannot make changes based off of what's happening in the moment. We have to have foreshadowing thought of what could be happening in the next 6 to 12 months, and then decide how we're going to make changes to benefit the future, right? So they would rather keep rates high for a bit longer, even if it causes some economic pain, to make sure that inflation is truly beaten, right? They're trying to pull off a soft landing, taming inflation without causing a deep recession. We were in a serious recession last year. It's an incredibly tough needle to thread. These decisions aren't always unanimous. Sometimes you'll see reports of dissenting votes within the committee, with some members wanting to be even more aggressive. Now, this decision just highlights the deep uncertainty that everyone is facing. But for you, the bottom line is a rate hold is simple. The era of expensive money isn't over. Oh Lord. See, when people come through with that nonsense about being blessed, look, if you was blessed, you would just be giving people money without having to talk to them because being blessed requires for you to be blessed and share your blessings. You will be doing it without broadcasting it, because if you broadcasting it, then you're doing it with strings attached, and that's not how blessings are passed on from person to person. It's done just because. So think about that. Now, for you guys with the rate hold, the relief that many borrowers have been hoping for has been postponed. So we're not going to see a reprieve. I know that we were talking on the show about how they were discussing this year about putting a cap on variable credit card rates to 10%. They have not passed that into law yet. They're still debating it. It's going to be one of the things on the agenda when they start talking about the budget for October, right? So we're not going to see that peace of mind yet. But if it did happen, it would be phenomenal for us. It'll be harder for us to get approved for credit cards because the credit card companies are going to be more stringent. But it would provide us with a lot of peace of mind and allow us to reduce our debt. Now, the feds are essentially in a wait and see mode because everything that happened is not written in stone kind of stuff. We are in the moment and things could change at any time. We could stop the conflict with Iran and gas prices will go down dramatically. And if gas prices goes down, everything that is impacted by gas prices will go down, which means that inflation would diminish simply by stop fighting, right? So watching the economic data is going to be something that they have to do before making the next move. And this decision to hold rates at multi-year highs has immediate consequences for your wallet. The Fed's decision to keep interest rates elevated isn't just an abstract headline. It's a direct hit on your wallet. For anyone with a variable rate loan, this rate hold means borrowing costs will stay painfully high. Now, let's start with the most direct connections, those credit cards. The vast majority of credit cards have a variable annual percentage rate. We don't pay attention to that when we pay the bill. This rate is typically the prime rate plus a set margin. Since the prime rate closely follows the Fed's rates, when the Feds hold the rates high, your credit card APR stays high. So if you're one of the millions and millions of Americans who carries a credit card balance from month to month, this APR is a brutal 20 to 25% or even higher. Some of us have been experiencing a marginal average of about 22%. Well, that's not going to change anytime soon. This means that a huge part of your monthly payment gets eaten up by interest every month, making it incredibly hard to pay down the debt and eliminate what you owe. The Fed's stance means that no relief is in sight for that crippling interest. Steven says, if gas prices go down, I feel another reason for inflation will appear. It always does since 2019. Well, see, gas is supposed to go down for the fall and the winter. That's usually how it goes down. And when that happens, flights become cheaper and more people are able to travel for the holidays. Because the prices aren't going down because of the conflict overseas, it is not likely that as much travel will occur because not as many people have the money to pay that $500, $700, or $1,000 worth of money for a flight on Priceline that used to be $100 for the same flight, right? So the inflation that happens from lower gas prices is more travel, and that usually happens during the summer. So if conflict stops or diminishes after September, we're not going to see an inflationary behavior in our economy because everybody's going to school, everybody's going to work. We might have a little bit of extra money to buy stuff online for Christmas, but there's not going to be as much travel because by the time the fuel prices diminish after the conflict diminishes, it's likely to be, if conflict stops in September, gas prices would start going down in like February. We would see inflation next year. And then we gotta This individual needs to be blocked and removed. They get reckless on TikTok, man. But yes, if all the stuff went down, probably this time next year, we would see an inflation on certain goods and services. And really and truly, what you might notice is that it might not actually be a visible inflation. It might be a fixated price. Take, for example, groceries went up in price right now. Everybody's used to paying even more expensive food at Walmart for great value products. Now, when oil prices goes down, gas prices will stay the same for 6 more months, which means that retail prices are going to stay the same. Now, when gas prices effectively go down at the pump, the grocery store doesn't have to reduce its price. The product will still cost the same price. The company will just make more money off of it because they're not spending as much money on shipping. So you won't see a can of peas that went up to $3 a can is not going to go down to $2 a can because gas prices went down to $2.20. What'll happen is that can of peas will stay $3 a can, and when gas prices go back up, that can of peas will go up to $4 a can. That's what's going to happen. So instead of us seeing an inflation of goods and services because gas prices go down, we will see a lower cost for some things like travel that is directly baked into the airplane ticket, but no change in like buying groceries, buying clothes, buying cars, buying commodities, because the retailer is not going to reduce their price because the shipper reduced their price. Walmart's not going to roll back prices legitimately and keep their profit margin fixed just to save customers money. No, they're going to allow their profit margin to increase so that they can take good care of their investors. Now, if this is going to be similar for the HELOCs, like credit cards, they're almost always tied to the prime rate. Many homeowners who took out a HELOC when rates were near zero are now facing much higher monthly payments. The Fed's current position means that those payments aren't coming down anytime soon. What about car loans? The link here is going to be a little less direct, but still strong. While many auto loans have fixed rates, the rate offered to new borrowers are heavily influenced by the overall cost of money. When the feds keep rates high, this is going to cost banks to fund the loans with a higher premium, and they're going to pass that premium on to the customer. That's going to be the big reason why the average interest rate for a new car loan remains stubbornly high, adding thousands to the total cost of the vehicle. Now, recognize anybody trying to buy a car after 2025 is going to experience the $15,000 increase on the principal of the car. Then you're looking at an increase of interest rates on that exact same car. So when we used to get a Honda Civic, Honda Accord, or a Toyota Corolla, Toyota Camry for under $20,000, that $15,000 increase is putting those cars at or above $25,000. Which also means that when you when you finance that car, 8-10%, something like that, your $25,000 car is now a $350 a month payment for 7 years. When we used to pay $150 a month for these cars, now we're paying 3 times more for these cars. Trying to told y'all, y'all ain't trying to hurt me. He said, my car loan is locked in. That's because you got your car loan from a buy here, pay here scenario. If you go to a dealership where it is outsourced borrowing, like from the bank, from a credit union, the bank or the credit union is going to tack extra costs onto your amount, give you the money for your car, and now you got to pay the bank an arm, leg, and an eye to borrow money from them. Of course, the Fed's policy isn't the only thing that determines your rates. Your credit card score, your credit score is going to impact your credit card, your loans, your interest rates. The lender's own business strategy also is going to play a huge role in it, but the Feds set the underlying weather conditions. And right now, the forecast is for continued expensive borrowing. Now, while high interest rates are tough for borrowers, there is another side to the coin, because for savers, the Fed's policy can feel like a long awaited reward. For years after the 2008 financial crisis, interest rates were near zero, and the return on a standard savings account was practically nothing. You were effectively losing money to inflation. Today, the situation is completely different. The Fed rate hikes means banks are now competing for your deposits, and they will ultimately offer you money to get your money into their bank. This is great news for savers. You're going to see a lot of banks putting up, say, for example, uh, first time applicants for the first $500 gets like a 5% back on their deposits for money that's held into the account for over a certain number of days, kind of situation. You might see like 5.5% for a checking account. They do that to get you to put your money into their bank. I would take advantage of those promos, and it's ultimately effective one per customer. You can try to run the rat race and see if you can have multiple accounts with the same bank. I wouldn't do that. I would have one bank account for each bank and take advantage of any 5.5, 4.5% interest rate for whatever amount of money that they're going to do. Back in the day, GTE was offering 5% back on the first $500 for the checking account, and another 5% back for the first $500 on the savings account, which means you could put $1,000 into GTE and get 5% return on investment. It's not a lot of money. It's like what, $5, but or $50 really, right? Is that? Yeah, $50 on $1,000, $50 a year. It's not a lot of money, but if you were getting that $50 a year, you were moving that $50 a year to a brokerage account, or moving that $50 a year to a high interest savings account, you would be effectively getting money from them just holding your money. Now, yeah, they're going to flip your money and make tons more money than what you were doing, but that $50 a year is way better than 0.064% return on investment, where you would likely be getting like 6 cents on every $10,000 from leaving it into a savings account. The most immediate winners are going to be people with high yield savings accounts. And we talk about these on the show on a regular basis: high yield savings accounts, health savings accounts, money mutual accounts. We talk about this stuff on a show on a regular basis, along with other investment opportunities. These are usually offered by online banks with lower costs, who pass the savings on to you with higher rates. Is this environment what you need? I think so. Many of the accounts are offering annual percentage yields, AYPs, that are way higher than you'd find at a traditional bank, which is why I tell you there's well over 8,000 financial institutions in America. About half of them are banks, and the other half of them are credit unions. And you're going to have a large portion of them now that are online, non-brick and mortar entities that have other amenities from fintech, including international bank accounts that allows for currency conversions in your bank account, which allows for you to travel to a different country and not have to deal with conversion rates in the moment, which is more effective for you, right? What this means is your emergency funds that you normally sit somewhere and it almost does absolutely nothing can finally start generating some real income, which increases your emergency funds in case of a more expensive emergency than you originally budgeted for. Certificates of deposits, or CDs, have also become much more attractive. While they're less than before, because they used to be at 4 and 5%, now they're more to the magnitude of about 3.3%. With a CD, you agree to lock your money in for whatever the set term is in exchange for a fixed interest rate over the period of the contract. With rates high, your yields on new CDs are going to be the best that they've been in years. It is still currently lower than the treasury bonds that are at like 4.1 and 4.4%, but it is still safe investments in banks that perceivably don't look like they're going under over the next 5 years. This can be a great option for money that you know you're not going to need to touch for a while, because you have CDs that do 3 months, some that do 6 months, some that do a year, some that do 3 years. I would either do them quarterly or annually. And the reason, or semi-annually. And the reason why I would do one of those three is that every quarter I can turn it over and do something else, or every year I can turn it over and do something else. If you get 4 of them and you're doing them quarterly, every month you would be turning one over. If you did 12 of them and you were doing them annually, every month you'll be turning them over. And by doing that, you'll be getting money back on your investment on a regular basis as safe investment options. Still very low interest rates because, like I said, 3.1, 3.3% on investment. We got portfolios in our broker portfolios for our brokerage accounts in the membership on the YouTube channel that are doing like 15% return on investment. So, I mean, there's a whole other area where you could turn a lot more of a profit. But the fact is that it is better than leaving your money in a safe in the house and getting no interest back. Just think about that. Money market accounts are also offering yields that are very strong as they tend to move up and down with the Fed policy rates as well. Now, a little caution is going to be needed because first, the banks are often much quicker to raise rates to loans than on savings. So this means that you have to be an active consumer and shop around for the best rates, not just get whatever they offer. Don't assume that your current bank, the one that you've been putting your money in for the longest period of time, is going to give you the best deal. You may be banking at Bank of America and might actually find better rates than Navy Federal. You just don't know. You got to go look somewhere else. Second, what really matters is going to be your real return. The interest rates that you earn minus the rate of inflation. So if your savings account pays you 4%, but inflation is 3%, your purchasing power is only growing by 1%. And while the Fed's policy has created a much better environment for savers, it is not a magic bullet. You have to proactively take advantage of whatever opportunities come about. And that's one of the reasons why we talk about that 15% return on investment for the brokerage account. The S&P 500 operates at about 10%. The portfolios that we're operating on is 5% higher than that. You take off like 3-4% for inflation, we're dealing with like 11% return on investment, right? You hit it with another 3% for taxation, and we're operating at 8% post-tax after inflation income. That's a huge increase because the S&P 500 is giving you 10%, and after you shave off 7%, you're at 3%. We're operating at 5% higher than the S&P 500. But if you got a savings account that's getting 3 or 4% before taxation, inflation ate it. So you're still taking a loss because that 3% that come off for taxation, that's a negative value. You're losing money leaving it in certain accounts. We talked to you guys about opportunity cost. Now, no talking about interest rates would be complete without covering the housing market. And we're almost done here. Make sure that you guys mash those reaction buttons and continue to steadfast. We're almost done here. A home is the biggest purchase that most people will ever make, and the mortgage rates has a huge impact on the finances. But the relationship between the Feds and the mortgage rates is one of the most misunderstood topics out there. So here's going to be the key. The Feds does not directly set fixed mortgage rates. When you hear the Feds raise, special shout out to OG Kicks. When you hear the Feds raise, it's a key rate. It doesn't mean the rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage. What will automatically jump by the same amount. That's not what that means. So what does set mortgage rates mean? Well, a fixed mortgage rate tends to track the yield on long-term U.S. Treasury bonds, especially the 10-year Treasury notes, right? So think of it this way. Investors can buy a mortgage-backed security or they can buy 10-year Treasury bonds. Since they are competing for similar investment dollars, their rates tend to move in the same general direction. But that doesn't mean that the Fed is irrelevant. The Fed's overall policy and its talk about the future of the economic cast, a huge showdown and a large shadow over the bond market in its entirety. So when the Fed signals that it will keep rates higher for longer to fight inflation, it tends to push up the yield on long-term bonds. Investors anticipate that the Fed's tight policies will continue, so they demand higher yields to compensate for the risk. So while the Fed's main rate is a short-term rate, its policy stance is a major reason why mortgage rates can get so high. Notice they're 3 to 3.5. Our mortgage rates are 6 to 7. And what do you think the difference is between the two? Well, if the Feds are getting 3% to 3.5%, the bank's going to profit 3.5 to 3%. We're paying 7. They pass it on to the customer. Investors that loan money to high risk individuals where banks don't, they could borrow money from the bank at 7% and then lend it to a high risk agent for 14%. That person really needs the money, they'll pay it. You profited 7%. The bank profited 3.5%. The federal government profited 3.5%. Everybody's got to eat, but it's passed on to the customer. So the market is going to be reacting to the Fed's commitment to taming the inflation. And this leaves the housing market in a strange place because affordability can be pushed to near historical lows when high home prices are combined with high mortgage rates. Because you got to also remember that in addition to the cost of the house for the loan being higher now, we have to recognize that all of the tariffs that got passed recently, the tariffs that were passed last year, where they were adding tariffs, because they added tariffs to textiles and other such consumables that are in real estate development. They just passed some more tariffs that I just didn't cover on the show because it was specifically directly related to real estate. Not a lot of people are in real estate, but it was a lot more stuff that applied to the furniture, the cabinets, rehabilitating your kitchen, rehabilitating your flooring, all of this stuff that is imported goods and services. What's up, Damien? That directly impacts the cost of the house. Now the house cost, because of inflation from tariffs, is going to increase the price of the house another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 because of the repairs. So a fix and flipper is going to buy the house, put more money into the house, which means they're going to raise the price of the house, which means you got to pay more for the house. So a house that might have would have been $150,000, $200,000 3 years ago is now going to be $250,000 to $300,000 because of the cost to fix the house. Then with that $300,000 house with 7% interest, you're looking at potentially a $2,500 mortgage, where you otherwise 3 or 5 years ago would have had $1,000 mortgage. That's the difference. But with rental properties in New York being $5,500 for rent, you might as well pay $2,500 for a house. Now, at the same time, many would-be sellers are going to be locking in by the super low mortgage rates that they got years ago, which keeps the supply of homes for sale very tight. Not too many people are trying to let these properties go. Now, we spent this time talking about two seemingly separate stories unfolding in Washington. One in the corner, you have Congress at its chaotic annual drama over government funding. And in the other corner, you have the Federal Reserve, a more deliberate institution holding interest rates high to fight off inflation. On the surface, they look like different worlds. One is political theater, the other is complex monetary policies. But if you are a typical American, you don't experience these things as separate stories. You experience them as a single combined pressure on your finances. They're going to be two different hands squeezing the same wallet. Y'all remember that Malcolm X movie, Get Your Hands on My Pocket? Y'all better start tweeting that stuff to Donald Trump. Get your hands on my pockets. The shutdown theater from Congress creates anxiety and uncertainty. Will the federal services be there? That's what we got to ask ourselves. Will the dysfunction hurt the economy? A continuing resolution removes the immediate threat by just postponing it till December, I think, 15th, leaving a lingering sense of instability, because what will Christmas be if nobody's got a job? The Fed's policies creates a more immediate and tangible pressure. It's the pressure of costs. It's the concrete dollars and cents reality of your credit card bill being higher, your car payment being more expensive, and a mortgage being just out of reach. This isn't a hypothetical risk. It's the real financial burdens that are affecting your budget right now. So together, these forces create a unique challenge to the environment. Your government is simultaneously signaling that things are so precarious, they can't even agree on a full year's budget, while the central bank is saying that to fix the economy, your borrowing cost must stay higher than what you would prefer. It's a message of instability mixed with a message of uh, austerity. Navigating this environment requires understanding both of these forces. So, with this challenge in the backdrop, what are the particular takeaways for your own money? It's a specific financial advice that I'm not going to be giving you guys advice. I'm going to be giving you guys the framework for how to think about your finances when you're being squeezed from two different directions. So, hypothetically speaking, or for educational purposes, if you were to observe first the government funding issue, if you're a federal employee or a contractor, the CR means that your income is safe for now, but the fact that another shutdown fight is always just a few months away is a clear signal that your emergency funds is more important now than ever. The old rule of thumb was 3 to 6 months of living expenses. In an environment of reoccurring political cliffs. Aiming for those high ends of that range gives you an invaluable buffer, 6, 9, or 12 months, which is why I tell you guys, just pay your bills 3 months in advance. When the shutdown happens, it's not going to negatively impact you immediately because your bills are paid during the shutdown because you paid them 3 months ago. Now, for the Fed's impact, which affects everyone, including me, the message is to get defensive with your debt and offensive with your savings. On the debt side, high interest rates are a fire. Your job is to put it out. If you carry high interest credit cards, treat it like a financial emergency where the Feds has made it clear that the rate cuts aren't coming to you this quarter. Might not come next quarter either. You need an aggressive plan to pay down that debt. Whether it's the avalanche method by paying off the highest interest first and then snowballing, or using the snowballing method where you're paying off the smallest balance first and then working towards the larger method. So either way, the avalanche method allows for you to hit the ones with the most interest rates so that you're paying less interest rates over time, or the snowball one, which allows for you to clear out certain cards and give yourself a mental boost to clear out the rest of the cards. Either way, taking action right now is something that you need to do because every month that you're carrying those balances, you're losing a lot of money to interest. On the other side, this is going to be a moment to be proactive because, as we discussed, high yield savings accounts and CEs are offering some of the best returns that we've seen in years. So you don't want to leave large amounts of cash sitting in traditional accounts earning next to nothing. Take some time out of your week, maybe an hour or so, to research high yield savings accounts online. We actually put up some high yield savings accounts in our membership about a month ago. And I can update that list based on the interest rates in the membership on the YouTube side of things. You could be leaving free money on the table if you don't make changes and improvements. Make your cash work for you while the rates are high. Finally, for big decisions like buying houses or cars, this environment demands caution. I'm going to tell you, buy cash up front cars instead of financing things. High rates makes these purchases much more expensive. That doesn't mean that you can't make a move, but you need to be brutally honest about your budget. Do you really need this, and can you really afford it? You want to get pre-approved for the loans if you're going to be using a loan to see what you can truly afford. Don't stretch yourself thin based on the hope that rates will fall soon. Do not get your G-Wagon and all of these other expensive behind cars simply because you can afford the monthly note today. Because what happens if you get furloughed and you can't afford the month tomorrow? You want to get a reasonably affordable vehicle specifically because even in tough times, you can still make that note. So if you want your car note to be $175 a month, and that is the most that you're willing to pay for a car, then you want to pick a car that is closer to $15,000 total. You don't want to grab a $40,000, $50,000 car that's going to guarantee you a $500 or $800 a month car note, because the car insurance is going to be higher based on the value of the car as well as your credit score, which means that your $500 or $800 car note is going to leverage a $300 or $400 or $500 car insurance bill per month, which means now you're paying $1,000 to $1,200 a month just to drive the car. That's the same price as getting an Uber, just to pay for the convenience of looking flashy. Get a cheap economy car that costs less, that has a lower insurance bill. Get one that's like white or something like that, so that it doesn't have the higher insurance rates, right? Hope is not a financial strategy. The theme here is going to be control. You want to focus intensely on what you can control, and your spending, your savings, and your debt strategies are things that you can control. So let's put this all together. We've learned first, the temporary spending bill, the continuing resolution, isn't a solution, it's a patch, a political move to avoid shutdown, and it's going to bring temporary stability, but solves none of the underlying problems and guarantees another fight just a few months down the road. Second, the Federal Reserve is playing a different game with more immediate consequences for your wallet. By holding interest rates high, the Federal Reserve is making it clear that the fight against inflation is going to be the top priority, even if it means borrowing stays expensive for you today. You are living through a period where you're being hit by two powerful economic forces at the same time. Political uncertainty from Congress creates risks, while monetary policies from the Feds creates costs. You have to understand that both of these things will impact the stock market. So what do you think you're going to do next? Keep an eye on major elections, vote where necessary, as the outcomes will set the stage for the next budget battle, and pay close attention to the Federal Reserve's upcoming meetings and its comments on inflation and the job market. Any shifts in tone could signal a future change in interest rates. If they start talking gas, you might see them raising rates in December. If they start talking fluff, you might see them reducing things in December. But every quarter, there is an interest rate discussion. Every 3 months, there's an interest rate discussion. So you need to be paying attention to what's going on with that. This is a complex and often frustrating economic environment, but understanding the forces at play is the first step towards navigating your success. Now, if you guys made it this far, if y'all rode the wave for me over the last couple of hours, I want to appreciate y'all for investing your time in me. I hope that this breakdown gave you guys some clarity that you might have needed. We provide you guys with every day of the week. We start at about 11:30, 11:45 Eastern Standard Time. Every day of the week, we provide you guys with the information that y'all need to know what's going on right now and know what things you need to consider to make changes on. And throughout the year, we give you guys ways to reassess your budget, rethink about the way you're going to do things, and then reallocate your capital in a more effective fashion, which also increases your discretionary spending, which provides you guys with the type of lifestyle that you will feel more satisfied with. Because everybody watching the show right now has something in their life that they wish that they could change, but never put time into thinking about how to make that change. Now that you're coming to the show, you make it a regular occurrence to come to the show, you will start finding that it is a lot easier than you thought to change a lot of the things that are inside of your control. You just have to put effort into it. Because I'm going to show you guys all of the different ways that you can make changes in your lives, right? So if you haven't done so already, I want you guys to make sure that you take the time to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Twitch. I want you guys to make sure that you check the membership on the YouTube side of things, because we have a lot more in-depth detailed information there. Like and subscribe over there as well. And then make sure that you come back for all of the other videos that we're going to be giving you guys, because we're here every night of the week giving you guys all of the things that you need to be successful. Now, as I told you guys, we was going to run about 2 hours. We kind of hit that mark, 2 hours, 14 minutes, 2 hours, 15 minutes. Good. So we're going to wrap things up by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you ladies to make it make sense. So ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, I give you this information to make you guys higher value men, not just by improving your income, but also by improving your decision-making skills. Ladies, while this is a male-driven podcast from the male's perspective, you too can make yourselves higher value individuals by prioritizing the things that are inside of your control and changing the things you don't like, then navigating around the things that are outside of your control. Then prioritizing your 20 and 30-year plan, reverse engineering what you need to do today to accomplish those goals. Keep your eyes and ears open for the right suitor with the right personality and characteristics, drive, ambition, dedication, admiration, and integrity to accomplish his own goals. See his goals and see what they are and how they play into your goals. And if y'all's goals mesh together, y'all both have long-term satisfaction goals, not short-term gratification goals. Get rid of that YOLO lifestyle, get rid of that fear of missing out lifestyle, and start preparing for your future. Because enjoying the upcoming Drake concert or enjoying the upcoming Usher concert is not going to prepare you for when you're retired, needing in-home nurses, having to take medication, having a high insurance bills, and not having to go to work as a priority for your retirement, where you are permanently retired, not a door greeter at Walmart, calling that retirement. You guys got to understand where you want to be at in your future requires you to put effort in it today to get there tomorrow. You got to make your later greater by making changes today. If whatever you was doing in 2026 hasn't been working for you for the first 6 months out of the year, you need to cut that shit out and start planning on doing things differently for 2027 so that next year is better than last year. You should not have 10 years of the same stuff, the same disappointment, always telling yourself that it's going to get better. It's not always going to be like this, but you never put any effort into making any changes so that it stops being like this. If things are crap, and it's been crap for the last 5 years, that's because you haven't put any effort into changing the crap. But eventually, if you put in effort to start making changes, you will start seeing improvements. And once you start seeing improvements, you will start seeing personal satisfaction. And that personal satisfaction will motivate you to put more effort into making the change that you need to be successful. Now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to give a special shout out to OG Kicks, Joe Jack, Steven, Michael, FX Trader, Aztec, Unc Andy on YouTube side of things. I really appreciate you guys for swinging by the show. I want to thank everybody else for coming to the show. Oh, I see Omni81 and Red Void from Twitch side of things. I really appreciate y'all for coming to the show as well. And I want to thank everybody else for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I'm going to see you guys on YouTube tomorrow night.
Higher ground. Used to chase validation, now I validate that's my personal command. I'm not landing on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.